Hello! We have arrived to our last day of talking about ancient Greece. Next week, you're going to review for a test all over chapter 11. It's going to be fun. It has been nice going over everything in this time period. Do you remember the two main parts of the Hippocratic Oath? What it talked about? Two main parts. Yeah, the first part said basically never do harm to a patient. Never do harm to a patient. Always try to help a patient. And then the second part is keep things you learn from a patient secret. Good. Today we have one more small bit to finish up, and it's on page 350. So turn to page 350. 350. All right, we're first going to go through page 350, which is a map on ancient Alexandria. If you look at this, it says Uncovering Ancient Alexandria. Ancient Alexandria is slowly being uncovered. Part of the metropolis lies buried under the modern city, while the old seafront is now underwater. Divers have begun to explore the palaces and temples that slid under the waves during earthquakes. Recent discoveries confirm what we know from ancient writers, that Alexandria was one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world. And we see Ptolemy II and Queen Arsinoe living in the royal palace, and we see where the royal palace would have been. We see that lighthouse that we talked about on Monday, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. We see where Cleopatra's Needle, which once would have stood on the seafront of Alexandria, now is in New York City's Central Park. And we see a bronze figurine of a dancer from around this Hellenistic time period. And at the top, we also see someone kind of excavating what they can find underwater, because a lot of this, due to earthquakes, is now underwater, the ancient wonders. When Alexander founded Alexandria, he chose a spot with great potential for navy and trade. It had fine harbors that opened up onto the Mediterranean, was easily defendable because one of its sides is water, so you don't have to worry about neighbors, and it was connected to the Nile and the rich valley by man-made rivers. One story has it that he used chalk to mark places where he wanted certain buildings and a marketplace. After he ran out of chalk, he used ground barley for his markings. When birds ate up the grain, he grew alarmed that it was a bad sign. His seer, or someone that tells him if it's a good sign or a bad sign and tells him what might happen, told him not to worry. It was a promising sign that the city would one day feed many strangers. Which the city is very close to 3 continents. It's on the continent of Africa, but it's really close to Asia and Europe. The Think Critically question on page 350 says, study the map. How can you tell that the city was culturally diverse? How can you tell, looking at the map at the bottom of page 350, that a lot of different cultures were probably present in Alexandria? Okay, we see that there are 2 different quarters. There's a Jewish quarter and there's an Egyptian quarter. That shows us 2 different groups of people lived in this area. We also have a whole bunch of ancient Greek architecture, showing an influence from an outside culture in the area as well. And Alexandria was very culturally diverse due to its location. Alexandria, well, sorry. Do you remember who Aristotle's famous student was? Before we talk more about Alexandria. We learned about him before. Yes, it was Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great brought the knowledge and curiosity with him everywhere he conquered, and he conquered a lot of places. Aristotle had instilled with him a knowledge of studying nature, looking and observing things, and he brought that with him. This created a lot of documented research over a big span of land, and a perfect place to store all that information, a library, which you can see on the map on page 350. And we talked about the library at the beginning of this section on Monday. Alexandria, named after Alexander the Great, was a huge center of knowledge, and this great library, founded by Ptolemy but really got its start with his son, Ptolemy II, contained between 400,000 to 700,000 volumes of handwritten books in the forms of scrolls. Alexandria was very culturally diverse and had a part for the Jewish people, the Egyptian people, and overall was very influenced by Greece. It was also a huge center for trade for Africa, Asia, and Europe. When people came to trade, they brought with them knowledge and customs. And their main goal in Alexandria for their library was to get a copy of every book in the world. And it was in Alexandria that Jewish scholars created the Septuagint, which is a translation of the Hebrew Bible, which is our version of the Old Testament, into Greek. Euclid brought geometry together in his book Elements. Well, parts of the Old Testament. Sorry. Euclid brought geometry together in his book Elements. Archimedes, that's the mirror laser guy, may have also studied here, even though he spent most of his time in Syracuse. Not in New York, in Greece. He created a lot of inventions that are foundations of inventions today, like the Archimedes screw. He also made contributions to math. Where Alexander traveled, Greek culture traveled with him, and it made a huge impact in Italy, where the Romans were. The Roman Empire takes place after Greece's empire dwindles. This mixing of Greek and Roman culture creates a new era, not like the Hellenistic era, but the Greco-Roman era. There are a lot of similarities between these two cultures, especially in mythology. Same stories, different names. But that is something to talk about at a later time. You have finished, but before you turn away, you know what it's supposed to be. Dutch word of the day. Thought I would forget about it? I didn't forget about it. You've learned 3 words that are the start of a sentence, and it is my goal to have you learn that sentence so you can say at least one sentence in Dutch. This, if you are a girl, I want you to write down this word. This word, M-E-I-S-J-E, is pronounced meisje. Meisje. I wrote down how I would pronounce it underneath, but this is the actual Dutch word. Meisje. This means girl. So girls, you can say, ik ben een meisje, or I am a girl. Ik ben een meisje. Try and say it. Close. Keep practicing. Meisje. Ik ben een meisje. All right, boys, I did not forget about you because you should not have to say I am a girl when you are a boy. The Dutch word for boy is jongen. I have put how I would pronounce it right here, young-en. In Dutch, when J starts a word, it has a Y sound. Right, Mr. Bulwark? He says yes. So this is youngin. So if you were to say, I am a boy, that would be ik ben een jongen. Ik ben een jongen. Can you say that? Close. Ik ben een jongen. Good. So once again, meisje, if you are a girl, write it down. Jongen, if you are a boy, write it down. There are no new questions that we have talked about on your homework, but you should finish your homework today so you can turn it in. Tomorrow you will be doing an activity on a famous Greek myth, Pandora's box. Have you heard of it? No, I'm not talking about the music service. I hope you enjoy watching the video and answering the questions tomorrow. It's been great talking about ancient Greece. Tot ziens. I'll see you later.